After 60, time becomes louder. Not because the clock ticks faster, but because we finally start hearing it. For years, we were carried by momentum, chasing careers, raising families, solving problems we thought were permanent. We were the doers, the fixers, the ones who didn't have time to think too deeply because the days were always full. But now something quiet has arrived. It isn't sadness, though it may look like it. It isn't fear, though it often hides behind that name. It's a stillness, an unfamiliar kind, and it asks a single, powerful question. What now? It's a question no one can answer for you. Not your children, not your spouse, not even your younger self, because they've never been here before. But you have. You are. Right now. This stage of life is not the end of the book. It's the final chapter where the meaning finally rises to the surface, where all the scattered sentences and forgotten pages begin to make sense. And yet, many of us feel lost here, like guests in a house we once built but no longer recognize. We wonder, have I wasted too much time? Do people still need me? Can I still grow? Or is growth for the young? Let me tell you something the Buddha once said. As a flame blown out by the wind goes to rest and cannot be defined, so the sage freed from individuality goes to rest and cannot be defined. What does this mean for us? It means your value does not vanish, it shifts. It means your energy is not meant to push forward, but to fall inward. It means that now, more than ever, you are free to stop becoming someone and start being the one you've always been. You don't have to run anymore. You don't have to prove anything. And no, you are not invisible. You are just quieter now. And the world isn't used to listening to the quiet ones. But here's the secret the young don't know yet. After 60, the noise clears. And what's left behind is truth. This is not about regrets. It's about reverence. Reverence for what time has given and what it has yet to offer. Because even now, especially now, there is a wise way to spend your time. So let's walk this path together. Let me show you what it means to live the Buddhist way after 60. Not with shame for the past, not with fear of the future, but with a mind like still water and a heart like open hands. Part 1 begins now. Part 1, the illusion of time. When we were children, a single afternoon could feel infinite. The sunlight poured through the windows like honey, slow, golden, and eternal. A bike ride down the street, a paper boat floating in the rain, the sound of wind rustling through leaves. Each moment lingered as if time itself slowed down to watch with us. But now, the years slip by like weekends, and we blink only to find ourselves older, wondering where it all went, what changed. The Buddha reminded us that everything is impermanent, but he also warned us that much of what we call reality is shaped by illusion. Time isn't a fixed river. It's a feeling, a reflection of how conscious we are in each moment. When we are present, 1 hour can feel like a whole chapter. But when we move through our days on autopilot, time collapses, unnoticed, unlived. I once met an old man named Hari at a meditation retreat in the mountains. He had lived through decades, raised children, seen heartbreak and beauty. But when I asked what he remembered most about his life, he smiled and said, "Not much. I was there for all of it, but not really present." That moment stayed with me, because it's true for many of us. We wake up, glance at our phones, sip our coffee, go through familiar motions. Life becomes a loop, and the brain, ever efficient, stops recording what it already knows. Days pass, but few stay with us. That's why time feels full when we're in love, or traveling, or learning something new. The mind is alert, the heart is open, but in the dullness of repetition, awareness fades, and so does our memory of living. In Buddhism, this is called time blindness, a kind of spiritual sleepwalking. The Buddha taught sati, or mindfulness, not just as something you practice while sitting in meditation, but as a way of being awake to the ordinary. He said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, but concentrate the mind on the present moment." But this presence isn't something dramatic or forced. It begins gently. It begins by doing something different, sitting in a new spot, walking a new path, cooking something unfamiliar. These aren't just small acts. They're sacred gestures, rebellions against the numbness of routine. You can also pause during the day, just for 10 seconds, to breathe, to notice the warmth in your hands, to listen to the silence beneath the noise. These short pauses act like anchors, slowing down the rush of time and reconnecting you to now. And if you can, write, even a single line, not about what you did, but what you noticed. What made today feel different, however small? Journaling isn't just reflection, it's remembering yourself. A Zen master once said, "A day without reflection is like a meal without salt." In the end, the real illusion isn't that time is moving too fast. It's that we think we're powerless to slow it. But you are not powerless. You can wake up right here, right now. And in doing so, you'll discover that eternity isn't somewhere far away. It's in your breath, it's in your tea, it's in this very moment. Part 2, what truly matters. Somewhere in the quiet turning of midlife, something subtle yet profound begins to shift within us. It doesn't announce itself with noise or urgency. It arrives like a whisper at dusk, unnoticed at first but undeniable once felt. It is the quiet realization that much of what once consumed us, our endless tasks, our chasing of status, our carefully constructed routines, may not have truly mattered at all. Years ago, during a volunteer training at a hospice center, I met a retired nurse named Helen. She had spent decades in hospitals, welcoming life and comforting its final breath, witnessing both the first cries of newborns and the final words of the dying. At 72, she chose not rest, but purpose, offering her time to sit with those nearing the end. One afternoon, as we sat near a window where golden light filtered in, she turned to me and said, "In all my years of being beside the dying, not once did someone ask for more meetings, more money, or more time to send emails. They asked for time, for forgiveness, for someone they loved." That stayed with me. The Buddha spoke of right view, a way of seeing that cuts through illusion and reveals what truly liberates. And one liberating truth is this: not all things that seem urgent are important, and not all that is important will demand your attention. In fact, the most meaningful moments are often the quietest, the ones easy to miss while rushing through life. Yet many of us, especially during the peak of our careers, confuse productivity with purpose. We fill our calendars, not our hearts. We answer every message, but leave unread the silent longings of our soul. Time, however, has a way of revealing the truth. Only when we pause, sometimes decades later, do we realize the cost of the choices we made. The missed birthdays, the quiet mornings we hurried through, the chance to truly listen to a child's story or forgive someone we once loved. In Buddhist teaching, there is a powerful practice called the 5 recollections. Among them is the reminder, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. This isn't meant to scare or depress us. It is meant to awaken us, to help us see clearly before it is too late. One practice I often share is what I call the deathbed perspective. Imagine yourself at the very end of your life, looking back. What will matter then? Will it be the perfect inbox or the quiet walk with your partner? The spotless kitchen or the time you held your friend's hand after they lost someone? We often think we need to make grand changes, but the truth is, the shift begins with attention. It begins with choosing what we give our energy to. Try this. Before the day begins, before the noise of the world enters, sit for just 5 minutes. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, if today were my last, what would truly matter? Don't judge the answer. Just listen. Let it come from the still place inside you. Then let that answer, not your to-do list, guide your day. Because the Buddha wasn't just speaking about work when he said, your work is to discover your work and then give yourself to it with all your heart. He was speaking of Dharma, the sacred, soulful path you're here to walk. That may be raising children with love, caring for your garden, helping someone heal, or simply sitting in stillness, watching the wind pass through trees. In the end, the truth is this: what matters most is not how much we did, but how deeply we felt. Not how full our schedule looked, but how full our presence was. And the most beautiful part of it all? It's never too late to begin again. Never too late to return to what really matters. Even now, in this very breath, the path begins again. Part 3. Relationships as sacred grounds. There's a certain quiet that fills the room when someone over 70 speaks of old friends, not in the noisy way that youth speaks of crowds and parties, but in the kind of hush that comes when memories feel too tender to hold out loud. You'll often hear something like, "We lost touch," or "I wonder how they're doing these days," and sometimes, "I wish I'd said more before it was too late." In a small Buddhist community near San Jose, I once met a man named Roy. He was in his mid-80s, tall and soft-spoken, with a gentle shake in his hands that time had gifted him. During a group reflection on forgiveness, he opened up haltingly at first about a brother he hadn't spoken to in over 30 years. A fight over something trivial, long since forgotten in detail but not in feeling, had severed the tie. Yet not a single week passed without Roy thinking of him. "I've written him letters," he said, eyes wet but unwavering, "but I never had the courage to send them." There is a profound teaching in Buddhism. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. And in that moment, you could see Roy wrestling not just with regret, but with something more subtle. A grief for a relationship still alive but long abandoned. So many of us carry invisible cords tied to others, some warm, some tangled, some frayed beyond recognition. As we grow older, the weight of those relationships, the spoken and unspoken, the presence and the absence, begins to shape us in ways that are hard to name. For some, it's the sweetness of a decades-long marriage, tender even in silence. For others, it's the ache of a friendship lost, not to death, but to distance. And for many, it's the soft sorrow of realizing we were present in body, but absent in heart. In Buddhist understanding, relationships are seen not just as social ties, but as sacred fields where our karma unfolds. Every interaction, whether brief or deep, is a kind of planting. A word spoken in kindness becomes a seed of peace. A moment of neglect, a missed apology, becomes a karmic ripple we carry until it's resolved. This is why the Buddha placed so much emphasis on right speech and right intention. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. A simple smile, a question asked with genuine care. The small things are not small. They are, in truth, the fabric of connection. One story from the sutras tells of the Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, who became his adversary. Despite betrayal and harm, the Buddha never returned anger with anger. He taught his disciples that the heart must remain spacious enough to hold even those who have wronged us, not to justify harm, but to dissolve the bitterness that harms us when we carry it. If you're watching this now, perhaps someone has come to mind, a sibling, an old friend, a spouse long past, or maybe even a neighbor you once shared coffee with, but haven't spoken to in years. Ask yourself gently, is there something left unsaid? Something worth reopening? Not to fix the past, but to free the present. And if that feels too far, start small. A short message, a letter, a prayer, even holding someone in your heart with kindness. Through the practice of metta bhavana, loving kindness meditation, we can begin to mend the unseen threads that tie us to one another. Relationships are not built only on the big things, the anniversaries, the reunions, the heartfelt apologies. They are built more often on the daily gestures, the call to check in, the remembering of a favorite story, the quiet listening without needing to reply. And yes, sometimes the bond remains broken. Not every door reopens. But even then, peace is possible, not because the other person changes, but because you choose to release the suffering. As the Dhammapada reminds us, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Let us speak fewer words, but make them count. Let us love not in grand declarations, but in quiet daily deposits of care. Let us make peace not only with others, but with ourselves, for the ones we love too little, too late. Because in the end, it is not the number of people we've known that matters. It is the depth of presence we offer to those who crossed our path. And it is never too late to plant one more seed of kindness in the sacred ground between hearts. Part 4. Purpose and Inner Work. After retirement, there is a moment, sometimes subtle, sometimes deafening, that arrives when the structure of work begins to dissolve. No more morning rush, no more meetings, no deadlines, no office politics. At first, there is a sense of relief, even celebration. You sleep in, you travel, you enjoy the leisure that once seemed so far away. But then after a while, something begins to shift. A quiet question, barely a whisper, rises from the stillness. Now what? It's a question not of survival, but of meaning. And for many people over 60, it is the most important question of all. I once spoke with a man named Richard, a retired architect from Colorado. For over 40 years, he designed buildings that would outlive him: hospitals, schools, civic centers. He was meticulous, driven, widely respected. But after retiring at 67, he told me something that caught me off guard. "I don't know who I am when I'm not building something," he said. It wasn't said with sadness, but it was said without clarity. He wasn't lost exactly, just untethered, like a ship that had left the harbor but hadn't yet set its course. He didn't miss the work, not really. He missed the purpose. In Buddhism, there is a concept called sankhara, formations of the mind, patterns of doing, becoming, achieving. These formations, if left unchecked, can run our lives without ever asking us if they still serve us. Retirement, in this light, isn't the end of purpose. It's the beginning of conscious purpose. It's a new chance to turn inward, to meet ourselves not as workers, parents, providers, or achievers, but as human beings with something still beautiful to offer. The Buddha taught that right livelihood is not just about earning income, but about living in harmony with our values. And after retirement, that harmony may look very different. It may mean mentoring a young neighbor, writing down stories for your grandchildren, tending a garden with reverence, volunteering, not to stay busy, but to stay connected to the web of life. I met a retired school teacher once who began reading aloud to children at the public library every Thursday. She called it her dharma in disguise. To her, it wasn't just a hobby, it was a continuation of her inner work, showing up with patience, presence, and warmth for others. She said, "When I stopped giving, I stopped growing." But here's the beautiful paradox. Purpose at this stage of life isn't necessarily about doing more. It's about being more present, being more generous, being more in touch with what moves your heart, even if no one else sees it. And yes, there are those days when the body feels heavier, when the world moves too fast, when you wonder if you've become invisible. But please know this: your worth is not tied to what you produce. Your presence, your listening, your stories, your silent wisdom, is a gift this world desperately needs. In the Majjhima Niyama, the Buddha shared, just as the great ocean has only one taste, the taste of salt, so too does the Dharma have only one taste, the taste of liberation. Liberation at this stage in life often means freeing yourself from the belief that you must still prove something. It means embracing your experience not as something behind you, but as something you now embody. You are a walking testament to survival, to love, to endurance. So if you find yourself asking, what's my purpose now? Try asking instead, what brings my heart alive? Where can I offer my stillness, my compassion, my presence? And know this, even the quietest acts, making soup for a neighbor, lighting incense each morning, sitting with someone who is grieving, can be offerings of the highest kind, not because they are loud or visible, but because they are rooted in awareness. Purpose after retirement doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. And in truth, your most meaningful work may not be what you build with your hands, but what you awaken in others simply by being deeply, unmistakably yourself. Part 5. Health, energy, and compassion for the body. As we age, our bodies begin to change in ways we can no longer ignore. The knees creak a little louder in the morning. The back hums with quiet reminders when we rise from a chair. Even a gentle walk can feel like a meditation in patience. But instead of seeing these changes as betrayals, what if we learn to view them as invitations? Gentle nudges from the body, asking us to slow down, to listen, to care. In Buddhist thought, the body is not an obstacle on the path. It is the first foundation of mindfulness. Kaya Yama Pathana, as it's called in the Satipatthana Sutta, is the practice of watching the body, not with judgment, but with a loving awareness. I see you, old friend. I thank you for carrying me. I once met a woman named Grace at a mindfulness retreat in Northern California. She was 74, recovering from hip surgery. For most of her life, she had been fiercely independent, hiking, dancing, even teaching yoga. But after her surgery, she told me she felt like a stranger in her own body. I felt betrayed, she said softly, like my body had decided to move on without telling me. And yet, as the retreat went on, I watched Grace do something extraordinary. She began to befriend her body again. Every step with her cane became a lesson in presence. Every breath a prayer. One morning during walking meditation, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, I thought I needed to get strong again, but maybe what I really needed was to get kind. That shift from performance to compassion is at the heart of Buddhist practice. The Buddha taught us to treat our bodies not as machines to be pushed, but as temples, temporary, fragile, yet profoundly sacred. The vessel through which we experience this life. And when we stop resisting its aging, something beautiful happens. We start to listen. When was the last time you asked your body what it needed, rather than telling it what to do? So often, we treat fatigue like a weakness. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. We ignore pain, silence our hunger, override our natural rhythms in the name of productivity or obligation. But after 60, the body begins to whisper more clearly. It asks not for control, but for care. Not for punishment, but for presence. A Buddhist elder once said, the body is our first teacher. It teaches us impermanence every day. And indeed, the wrinkles, the slower movements, the forgotten names, they are not signs of failure. They are signs that the world is asking us to live more slowly, more gently, more deeply. One of the most powerful practices you can begin today is the body scan meditation. Lying down or sitting comfortably, bring awareness slowly to each part of the body, not to fix or change anything, but simply to notice, to offer attention like you would to a beloved child or an old friend. You may be surprised at what surfaces, not just tension, but gratitude, not just discomfort, but forgiveness. Movement, too, can be sacred. You don't need to run marathons or lift weights. A 10-minute walk in the morning sun, a few gentle stretches before bed, even standing outside barefoot to feel the earth. These are not small things. They are rituals of return. They remind your body that it still matters, that you are still here, that life is still flowing through you. The Buddha said, "To keep the body in good health is a duty, otherwise we shall not be able to keep our minds strong and clear." This isn't about clinging to youth. It's about cultivating vitality, the kind that allows us to be present for the joys and sorrows of this human life. So if your body is slower now, gentler, more tender, let it be. Treat it not as a broken tool, but as a wise teacher. One that has carried you across decades through heartbreak and healing, through love and loss. One that still wakes up each day and says, let's keep going. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of spiritual courage at this stage of life is learning to love the body exactly as it is. Part 6. The quiet power of continuing to learn and share. There's a gentle lie that floats around our culture, quiet, almost polite. It tells us that learning is for the young, that it's something we finish, a task, a milestone, something that ends when the classroom doors close or the job title settles. But in truth, the deepest learning doesn't begin in youth. It begins when you finally have time to listen, not to the world, but to life itself. And that usually happens when you're older. Real wisdom doesn't arrive with certificates. It comes with lived days, with sleepless nights, with mistakes you now wear like soft fabrics, once rough, now tender. There's a kind of learning that starts only when the urgency fades, when you stop rushing and start seeing, not just with the eyes, but with the whole heart. In Buddhism, this kind of learning is sacred. It's not found in memorizing verses or repeating doctrine. It's found in how you greet a morning that arrives after a long, aching night. It's in how you speak gently to yourself after you forget a name or your purpose. It's in how you respond, not react. How you forgive, not just others, but the younger versions of yourself. A man I once met at a mountain retreat said something that never left me. He was in his 80s, his hands shaking as he poured tea. He said, "I thought wisdom would feel like knowing everything. But it turns out wisdom feels like asking better questions." That's the shift, when learning becomes less about accumulating and more about deepening, less about adding, more about softening. And what's more beautiful? When you begin to share what you've learned, not to teach, not to impress, but to lighten someone else's journey, not by giving them answers, but by walking beside them. We often think we need to become experts before we can offer something. But the truth is, sometimes the person still learning is the one most qualified to guide others, because their heart is still open. Their ego hasn't taken the front seat. One woman I know started leading a small mindfulness group at her local library. No training, no title, just a circle of chairs and her lived experience. She told me, "I don't teach. I just speak honestly. I share what helped me breathe again when I forgot how." And people came, not because she had answers, but because she had presence. In Buddhism, we call this Dharma sharing. It's not a lecture, it's a ripple, a soft offering, a candle lit in the dark. It can be as simple as texting a quote to a friend, saying, "This line stayed with me today," or telling someone younger, "I don't know everything, but I know what it feels like to lose your way, and I'm still here." Even the smallest stories matter, especially when they come from a place of truth. Maybe you've learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. Maybe you've learned how to sit with grief without needing to solve it. Maybe you've learned how to laugh even when your body aches. These are sacred teachings, not found in books, but written in your bones. And here's the secret. You don't need a classroom. Your life is the classroom, the kitchen table, The hospital waiting room, the long silent walks, the time you forgave someone who never apologized, all of it. So don't stop learning just because no one's grading you anymore. And don't stop sharing just because you don't feel qualified. Your wisdom isn't meant to be locked away. It's meant to be passed down like fire from torch to torch. Remember, even the Buddha didn't call himself the one who knew everything. He was Siddhartha, the one on the path, still walking, still learning, just like you. So keep asking gentle questions, keep reading, listening, watching, keep reflecting, keep evolving, not to become someone else, but to more fully become who you already are. And when you speak, even if your voice shakes, even if you forget half of what you meant to say, speak anyway, because someone out there might be waiting, not for perfection, but for a voice that sounds a little like their own. Part 7. Peace in the storm of emotions. There's something paradoxical about emotions. They come and go like clouds across the sky, shifting, swirling, sometimes passing gently, other times crashing like thunder. And yet, the older we get, the more we expect ourselves to have figured them out, as if age should grant immunity to anger, regret, fear, or sadness. But the truth is, no one outgrows their humanity, and perhaps we're not meant to. I once sat with an elderly man named Arthur during a week-long silent retreat. He was 81, dignified and quiet, but on the third day he didn't show up for the afternoon sitting. I found him later by the edge of the retreat center's garden, sitting alone with tears running down his face. When I gently asked if he was all right, he shook his head. "I just remembered something cruel I said to my wife 40 years ago," he whispered. "It just came back." The past, as we know, does not stay buried. Emotions, even those we thought long resolved, can resurface without warning, like letters delivered late by time itself. And when they do, we are offered a sacred opportunity, not to judge ourselves or suppress the feeling, but to meet it with presence. In the Buddhist tradition, emotions are not enemies to be defeated. They are visitors, shitavsi, mind moments arising due to causes and conditions. The Buddha taught that most strong emotions like anger or fear have a physiological lifespan of just 90 seconds if we don't feed them with stories, resistance, or rumination. This is a powerful insight. The first wave of emotion may be beyond our control, but what happens next? That's where our freedom begins. One of the most beautiful practices in Buddhist psychology is RAIN, an acronym from Tara Brach rooted in ancient mindfulness. Recognize what is happening, allow it to be there. Investigate with gentle curiosity, nurture with kindness. When sadness arises, a memory, a disappointment, or the ache of loneliness, you can pause, place a hand on your chest, breathe, recognize. This is sorrow. Allow. It's okay to feel this. Investigate. What does it feel like in my body? Then nurture. May I hold this with care? This is not weakness. It is inner strength, spiritual maturity. It is walking into the storm with an umbrella of awareness. The Buddha himself was never afraid to show emotion. He grieved the death of his disciples, comforted the sick with tenderness, and told Ananda that loving others deeply is not a distraction from the path. It is the path. Yet we live in a world that tells us to get over it, stay strong, keep moving. But what if true strength isn't in pushing feelings away, but in holding them gently, like a crying child? I remember a woman in her 60s saying, "I spent my whole life trying not to feel too much. Now I let myself feel everything, and strangely, I've never been more at peace." There was something deeply liberating in her face, not the absence of pain, but the absence of resistance. Emotions are not problems to solve. They are messages, sometimes messy, sometimes unclear, but always pointing towards something inside us that longs to be seen, heard, healed. When we avoid difficult conversations, we create emotional debt that accrues like unopened letters piling up in the hallway of the heart. The longer we wait, the heavier they become. But one honest moment, one sentence spoken with love, can clear years of silence. So let this be the season where you no longer apologize for feeling, where you no longer hide your tears or swallow your truth. Let this be the time when you sit with your sorrow, your joy, your fear, and say, "You are welcome here." As the Buddha said, as a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. And yet, even the rock feels the wind. Let that be your strength, not in being unmoved, but in staying centered within the movement. Because peace does not mean the storm never comes. It means you no longer lose yourself in the rain. Part 8. Money, time, and the inner riches. There comes a point, often quietly, when we begin to question the silent chase we've inherited. This belief that success lies in accumulation, a larger house, a heavier bank account, a future padded against uncertainty. But somewhere along the way, many discover what they truly traded for it: time. A retired man once told me, "I bought freedom with my years, but I paid for it with my life." He had the money, but not the moments. This isn't a condemnation of wealth. The Buddha himself lived among kings and merchants, but a reminder that wealth becomes dangerous when it promises what it can't deliver: permanence, safety, meaning. The Dhammapada whispers, "The wise man gives without clinging." So the question becomes not how much do you have, but how much of you is still free. In today's world, we often work hardest during our healthiest years, only to later use that wealth to patch up the relationships, peace, and vitality we lost. But time, unlike money, can't be stored, and no one knows their balance. The richest people I've met were not the ones with the most assets, but those who had time to sit with the sunrise, to walk slowly, to offer their presence without hurry. A monk once said, "Everything you buy also costs a piece of your awareness. The more we own, the more we must maintain, insure, and protect." But the simple things, a shared laugh, a deep breath under open sky, a meal with someone you love, these age well. They grow richer with memory, not poorer. One elder woman told me she stopped buying things for herself each month and instead gifted joy. A surprise coffee to a friend, a donation to someone she'd never meet. That, she said, makes me feel wealthier than any handbag ever could. This isn't about guilt, it's about liberation. Real wealth in the Buddhist path is measured not in possessions, but in peace. The kind that lets you sit alone in a quiet room and know, "I have enough. I am enough." The Buddha once said, "Live with enough. Share the rest." Not out of sacrifice, but because nothing loosens fear like generosity. So ask gently, what is enough for me? Would I rather have more money, or more moments, more upgrades, or more inner space? Because you can't buy more time, but you can begin to live more fully in the time you still have. And when the end comes, it won't be your salary you remember. It will be the freedom with which you lived, the love you gave, and the peace you carried, with both hands open. Conclusion: the currency of presence. If you're still here, still breathing with me in this space, then perhaps something inside you is beginning to shift. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet turning of the heart. Maybe you've realized you don't need to own more. You need to feel more. You don't need to stretch time. You need to step fully into it. Because the greatest illusion we've been sold is that life begins someday, when in truth, it's always been happening right now. The Buddha never taught us how to escape the world. He taught us how to stop escaping ourselves. And so this journey was never about renouncing money. success, or progress, but about reclaiming your soul in the process. Maybe today, all you do is notice how sunlight hits the wall. Maybe you listen to someone without waiting to reply. Maybe you forgive yourself for spending years asleep and thank yourself for waking up now. There is no rush, no perfection to chase, just this moment, rich with possibility. Just this breath, asking to be felt. You don't need a new life. You need to truly live the one you already have. So take just one insight from this reflection. Carry it gently, let it breathe inside your day, and walk forward, not harder, but softer, not faster, but wiser. Because the true wealth of life is not measured in hours or dollars, but in how deeply we were here for it. And the most precious moment to return to presence is always now.